Welcome back to my studio. This is Colleen with Designs of Value Art, and we're going to continue with the pink rose. I have gone ahead and done a little bit so you don't get bored watching me do all the same thing time and time again on each petal. But a couple things I want to go over with you. Let's talk about this first. And this is a design that I did in oils, water soluble oils like we're using on the rose, on watercolor paper. And you know, you hear all these things, oh, you can't paint oils on watercolor, you can't paint acrylics on watercolor paper, all of these things. Well, I was using this watercolor paper, and it is 100% cotton. It's a really good name. I'm not going to tell you what name because that wouldn't be fair to them. It might have been just this one sheet. I don't know. I haven't used any more of it since. But I wasn't happy with the way the watercolor was going. It wasn't accepting the water the way most of my 100% cotton did. So I just let it dry really, really well, bone dry. And I decided I was going to try something different. And I really like this apple. I always wanted to paint this apple. So I actually took an acrylic paint on the background and I rolled it on just like I would do as if it were on wood or whatever surface I was using for oil painting. And I did a couple coats and I let that dry. I put on my design in a white so I could see it. And then I decided I wanted to try the water soluble oils on it. And I think it turned out lovely. I am very happy with it. I don't particularly care for the white matte, but that's okay. I can change that. I just wanted you to see it in the matte. And so I guess my point to me showing you this is don't be afraid to try something new, even if everybody tells you you can't do it, because you might be able to. I was very happy with the way this turned out. It did take quite a while for it to dry. So I did, and that's the next thing I wanted to go over with you, and I think I just dropped my design somewhere. Gosh knows where. But I bought, and I'm going to move this out of the way because I don't want to get anything on it, the quick drying medium for the water soluble or water mixable oil color. And the reason I did this was because it was taking me 2 and 3 days for the project to dry before I could paint on it again. And it was just too long. I'm so used to watercolors that was very frustrating for me. So with this water mixable oil color, quick drying medium, I was able to paint the next day, which is really, really nice. Now, I did do, and I'm going to have you watch me add the quick dry to this. And again, I'm just going to move my design so it doesn't get anything on it. There we go. And I've got all my paints up here. I just laid out a whole brand new palette. So I got all my paints. I got the titanium white, permanent yellow medium, permanent yellow light, Pyrrole Red, ultramarine blue, Paynes Gray. I don't know if we'll end up even using that, but I've got it out. And then yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and burnt umber. Now I would normally, with a regular oil, I would add some right to the piles of paint. But unfortunately, then they dried so quickly, I'd have to lay out a whole new palette again. So to save time and to save money, not having to lay out a palette constantly and losing all my paint, we're just going to add it right to the mixes. And this is the medium, the light, the highlight, and then the dark and the very dark. Very exactly like we were doing before. Now I'm going to just take my palette knife, and I like this little skinny metal one, and I'm dipping it right into the jar. I've got a drip on the end of the jar. I'm just kind of knocking quite a bit of that off because you don't need a ton. All I'm going to do, I'm going to do it right up here. And what happens then is when we apply these colors and blend them onto the painting, they'll be dry by tomorrow. So one thing you do have to remember, and I ruined a project this way years ago when I was first starting out in oils, I didn't realize that it wasn't going to work very well. Just adding the rest of this in up here. Okay. So now I've got that on there where I want it. Now I'm going to just wipe it off of my palette knife so I don't have all that extra in there. Be sure and put your cap back on, your quick dry medium, because you don't want it to dry out on you. I picked this up, I believe it was right at Dick Blick. It wasn't too terribly expensive. But what I did with that other painting I was telling you about is I had the actually, I think I was using the quick dry paints, and I had not blended the project. I put the colors down where I wanted them, and I was going to come back and blend the next day. Well, guess what? It was completely dry, and I couldn't blend it. So I'm going to start with the medium, and I'm just going to take that quick dry medium and blend it right in to my pile of medium. And now I'm going to just go right down. This one's the dark. Make sure I get that all in there. And this will make it dry really quick for you. You can go ahead and paint right on top of it tomorrow, but you need to blend it. Make sure it looks, when you're ready to leave your studio or your painting room, that everything is blended the way you want it to be blended, because the next day, if you don't, it will be completely dry and you will not be able to blend it. There we go. I know that glazing medium's hard to see. There we go. Okay, so I'm wiping off my knife to make sure that's nice and clean for the next time that I need it. I'm going to put on my glove so that I don't get my hands on the background or in the painting surface. And you have seen me wear this before. I do it with watercolors too. So it just keeps my hand out of the project. So I'm putting my palette over there. I'm bringing back the rose so we can talk about what I did. So I went ahead and I put in this one and this one. And I think that one too. So we've just got just a little bit of a rose up there, or a petal I should say, up there to paint. And I cannot see my picture anywhere, my resource, so I can show you. So I'm going to go off camera for a minute and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I'm back. I found my resource material. It was laying on its side so you couldn't see it. Okay, so what I did was I went ahead and I base coated this one and started on this one here. and this one. And I started putting in a little bit of detail on this one. So what we're going to do today then is we're going to continue on those, and we're going to base coat this one. So I'm going to set this guy up here, and hopefully he won't fall down. That looks good. And you'll be able to see me do this. I'm going to just pull this a little bit closer to me. And I'm using a number 4 flat. Actually, I'm going to look for here's a number 6, and this one's a bright, so it's a little bit easier to use because it has the short bristles rather than this other one is a long bristled brush. And I'm going to just show you the difference here so you can see. Okay. Even the larger brush, which is the number 6 that's on the top, the bristles are shorter, you can tell. Okay, this one's a little bit too long. It's a little bit harder to deal with. So I'm going to set it aside so I don't pick it up again. So we're going to use a bright, shorter bristle brush, flat. Okay, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and fill these petals in. There's just 2 small ones. One up close that's fairly light, and then actually one that just comes down like this right in front of the hairs. So we'll do it that way. I'm going to do the light one first, and I don't want to start with the highlight. So we're going to just looking to see. Let's start with the medium value, and that's going to be our darkest value. I need to clean this brush. My darkest value will be the medium, so that's how light that petal is. All right, so I just cleaned my brush in water, and you want to make sure you get that nice and dry. So all I'm doing is taking my baby cloth I always have on my lap, and I'm pulling the bristles through, and I'm squeezing those bristles, but I'm doing them flat. You don't want to go like this with your brush into the baby diaper, because you're gonna make those bristles go out, and then you've lost the edge that you're looking for. So you always want to make sure you get all the water out of your brush if you're going to clean it at all. So I'm going to go ahead and reload again right back into the medium value. Now, I always load both sides of my brush, so then you're not going back constantly and reloading. You've got quite a bit. Now we're going to actually start with the petal behind, and I've got this mixed up here as I look at, and I'm just going to show you the reference. I've got this petal behind here coming in front, and that's not what happens. This petal that we're putting in right now actually comes in front of this. So that's what we're going to do. And you are able to, once this is dry like this, go right over the top of what's there. Okay. Now the darkest value is going to be down at the base. And I'm just looking at the resource material to make sure I do this correct. And it's nice to have my brush loaded on both sides, because then if I need more paint, I can just tip it over. And this does come down like this. Just reloading my brush. Just like that. And I do want it to go over some of this area here. Okay, so there's our first value laid in. And this is a small petal. I'll look and see if I can find a smaller. Right. That I can use. Aha. I have a number 2. And I'm going to clean it. I'm going to do the same thing with it. Wipe it through the baby cloth. Kind of gives you an idea too if you're cleaning your brushes well enough, because if there's something in there it will come out. Okay, so now the next value that we want to lay down is the light, and then we'll go to the highlight. Now this is not the lightest of these small petals at all. It's the next value that is. All right. And this is just the first layer, so it's the background's going to show through. So it's not going to look as dark as, for example, as this one, just because it's got 2 or 3 coats on it. And the very outside value is the light highlight. I'm going to bring that right down this edge like that. And we're going to do that same and I'm just looking to see there we go. Okay, so I've got my values laid in. Let's go ahead and blend, and I'm going to start from the light one and come down. It's going to be pretty difficult not to go over all 3 values at once, just because your brush would have to be so small. Don't forget to wipe it out as you go if you collect too much paint, and be sure and hold your brush back further, because that's when you're going to get a nice blend. I had a instructor that would say, look for the number of the size of the brush, and that's where you want to hold it when you're blending. So here's my number 2, and that's where I'm holding my brush. And it gives me a nice gentle touch to that surface and allows me to blend a little bit easier. See, I always want to move up on that brush. I always have to talk to myself and say, move your hand back, and remind myself to do that. Now you can see where I went over that other petal, because I had that in there wrong, and that's fine. That's what we're going to need to do, because I had messed it up. And don't worry if you do mess it up, because that's what's nice about oils, is you can just go over it if you need to. Now what I want to do, I'm going to let that set up for a little bit, and with that drying medium in there, it's going to set up fairly quickly. But what I want to do is I want to get this in here, and I want to blend it so it looks a little bit better. It looks pretty stark, and it's going to be the mid value. I think I've got it darker here, but we're going to put it in the mid value, and it's really just a streak of color, nothing more than that. It's going to make a huge difference. I'm going to just blend this out a little bit too, as I'm blending. go. Now, this, even with this being a number 2 flat, it's still too big for the area that I want to blend. So what I'm doing is I'm lifting my brush up and I'm using just this tip or corner of that flat to blend. And all I'm doing is blending it into the white or the real light that's there. Blending it in on one side, I'm going to turn this. And don't be afraid to turn your surface. I know a lot of people don't do it because when they're videotaping, they don't want it to be doing a lot of moving. But you know, I want you to see me do that because it's important for you to do that as well. Easier for you to get at. That's what you want to do. All I'm doing is using the very tip of that brush, tipping it over to the other side and doing this side again. Yeah, I like that a lot better. It's softer and it's more blended. All right. Now I'm going to go back up to my 6. And we're going to do this petal. And it's a fairly light petal. We got some dark down here, which again will be our medium. And I've already got some color in there. But again, it was so one layer. So it looks pretty much just like that one. And then we'll go in and do these two again. But let's start up here. So mid-value, and then light, and then highlight. So that's what we're going to do on that larger petal. And I'm just going to turn it so it's easier for me to get at, but you can see me do it. So I'm loading on both sides of my brush with that mid-value color. I'm going to just lay this in first. It's going to give us a nice crisp look to that inside petal too. As you lay your colors down, you want to lay it down just as if you were going to be blending. So you want to hold your brush the same way, but you want to fluff it out. And I'm just going to go right wherever I need the medium value first, as long as I have that in my brush. And that's going to be up here too. Now, one thing you want to be aware of when you're painting, and whether it be flowers or whatever, you don't want to outline, you don't want to completely outline that entire inside petal because it doesn't look realistic by outlining something like that. It comes off almost as a cartoonish appearance, so you don't want to do that. I do want to get some medium value in here. Okay, so I've dried wiped my brush, and now I'm going to go up to the light value and load my brush. Moving my hand back on that brush so that when I lay this down, it's being laid down just as if I were blending. And I ran out of paint, so I just flipped over my brush so I could use the paint I had loaded on the other side. Okay, So I got my two colors in there. Now we're not doing detail at this point. We're just blending it in, giving us a base coat when we come back and do detail at the end. So I've got my brush completely dry wiped. I've got my hand back on the number 6, so I'm in the correct position to do my blending. I straddle the two colors, the mid value and the medium, or the light value and the medium. And I'm just going to pull those two together, basically is what you're doing. Again, wipe your brush as you need to. Make sure your hand's in the correct position. Sometimes you'll notice that your brush feels more full of paint, and it just depends on how much paint you lay down to begin with. So that could change throughout the entire area that you're blending. Now here again, this is a small area, so I'm tipping my brush up to blend those two. Now I don't want to go right to the crevices where the mid value is. I want that to stay there. I'm just blending the light and the mid value together. I know a lot of friends, when I was in the oil world, would go right to the crevices, and I'd say, but you're losing that value. And that's what, once they figured that out, then they realized what they were doing wrong. And they weren't having a design that had the values in there that it needed, because they were losing the values that by blending them in too far. And I'm just laying in the highlight now. All right. Now it feels like I got a lot of paint on there. So we'll see when I go into blend. So I've got my hand back on the number. I'm straddling the two colors. I don't want to lose that mid value. So it's just a little crisscross and a pull, a little crisscross and a pull. We can come back and straighten out that edge too, and I'll show you how I do that. Making sure I got enough color up there, and I seem to. All right, now as I look at this, and I want you to be able to notice it as well, I've got a line right down here, and that's because I haven't blended that yet. So that's what you're trying to accomplish, is to get rid of that line. You want those values to meld together. There we go. No more line. But I just loaded that outside tip of my brush. And I'm going to go ahead and straighten out that edge if I need to. Okay. Now it looks to me, as I look at this, that I could use a little bit more mid value in here. So I'm going to add a little bit of mid value. Because my light. my mid value is in the dark corners. This is my light value. This is the three colors we're using. This is the middle color. Just felt like I had lost some of that. And you want to be able to see your values. Okay, so now that I've get rid of my paper towel here because it's getting awful dirty. Now that I've applied that mid value in there, I need to wipe my brush out so it's a nice dry brush. And we're going to blend it back into the medium value and the highlight. So we're going to blend in on both sides of wherever I applied that. And again, you don't want to leave this with that drying medium in there and not blend it, because it's going to look really strange and you won't be able to fix it, unfortunately. There we go. Now I am going to wipe my brush, set it aside, and I'm going to pick up my tool. What do they call this again? Almost like an eraser. I'm going to straighten out my edge because I don't want any extra color in here that I don't want. I want to get it off now before it dries on there permanently. So I'm just making sure my edge looks nice. Wiping off my tool as I go if I need to. There we go. I'm going to use the other side. Kind of erase that edge. There we go. And you can get these little tools in all different sizes. And they work real well, especially for this type of a project, to get those petals on the outside nice and crisp the way you want them. And as you're blending, sometimes it's pretty difficult to keep them that way, so a tool like this comes in real handy. Okay, so there's our second coat on that petal. Let's go ahead and put a second coat on that little petal there. Wipe my tool off so it's clean when I need it the next time. And I'm going to go back to my smaller brush again. Wrong one. Got my number 2. This is a pretty small petal. Now, this petal that we're going to be painting next, this inside area is like a shadow that starts down here, comes up to about here. So we're actually going to go right down to our very dark value, because that being a shadow has to be pretty dark. And with this being the second coat, now it's going to be more of a red, which is what we want. first values always look like they're like almost a purple because it's not really covering the green very well. That's the problem with having a dark background, but I love that. I think that really adds a lot to the project. And I'm going to turn this around so I can get at the other side of that shadow. Make sure it gets covered. And you're kind of cleaning up that petal too all at the same time as you lay these colors in. Now, this is kind of a little bit of a unique situation here on this petal because with that being our shadow, you don't blend that shadow away on this edge. Well, it wouldn't be on this edge anyway because it's underneath these petals here. But being a shadow, we aren't going to blend this in. And I'm going to just show you the design. So right here is what I'm talking about. This is actually a shadow from this petal that it's creating on this under petal. And you don't blend that edge of that shadow in. That has to be a crisp line. All right, however, it seems to be fairly light. I'm gonna go to the light value. And we're gonna put that in right up above. We're not gonna blend it, so you wanna make sure you get a nice good line. I'm just reloading as I need. More paint. You need to make your petal a little bit bigger like I did. Go for it. Now don't forget that this is actually has an edge to it out here. That's the background, so you don't want to fill that entire rest of that petal in. And now we're going to go to the next value, which is the highlight. And right on that outside edge. Just turn this around so I can get at it. Being such a small petal again, I'm just using the edge of my bristles. Okay, there we go. It's looking good. Now I just dry wiped my brush, getting ready to do the blending process. And again, we're not going to blend in that shadow, we're just going to blend in the light and the highlight. The light was the first value we put down. Highlight was the second value. Now this little brush picks up paint real quickly, so you got to continuously wipe it in between. But that gives you a better blend. As I come down here, I'm just going to use the tip of my brush to blend. There we go. Okay, so we got the second value on that petal. Let's go ahead and do the petal that's behind it. And let's look at that so you can see what I'm talking about here. This is the petal that we're going to be doing the second coat on. To create this shadow here, we have to go to the very dark again. And it's not really a shadow, it's just that it's actually helping to separate these two petals. And then they come up this way, and then this edge of the petal is handled a little bit differently than this one. So we're going to do the inside of it first, and then I'll show you how we handle the other edge. It's lighter because it's coming forward, so you need it to be lighter. Okay. So this is the very dark. Reloading. Now it doesn't come all the way down because that other petal comes out. Boy, it's almost like I lost that other petal, but we'll get it as I look at this. So we got that. And we're just going to come down right to there with that value. And then this comes up here, the darker value comes around that light petal. Aha, I can see what I did wrong here. Okay, so this is going to be up in here, but this is all going to be like that. It's going to look a little funky to begin with because I've got that other color under there. Okay. Dry wiping my brush. Now I'm going to pick up the next value, which is the dark value. Not going to need a lot of this. Alright, there's going to be just a touch. I'm just looking at my design. It's going to be just a touch over here. We need to straighten that out or flatten out this petal up here. It's not quite as much as it should be with that first layer, so do that. Alright, so I got that second value laid in. It's going to be hard to see because I've got, like I said, that other layer of paint in there. Okay. Now we're going to go up to the mid value and pick up that color. And I like to blend as I go. I know I've had some classes where the teacher has you lay down 5 different values and then she wants you to blend. Well, can get real sick of blending doing it that way. So I like to blend as I go. Lay the two values down, blend. Okay, I've dry wiped my brush. Softening them in. And I'm, like I said, with that color underneath there, I had that petal underneath wrong. So it's going to take a couple coats. So it'll look a little bizarre until I get that corrected. Okay. Now we're going to drop back down to the very dark, and I know that seems a little strange, but we've come up to this portion so far. We haven't dealt with that yet, but we will. Now I want to get this dark in here because that's going to create where that petal is actually going down in. So I'm putting that dark value very dark, I should say, value. Just looking at my reference photo, comes all the way down to there. All right. Want to go up to the dark. And this is just a very thin line of value. That we're going to lay in. I'm going to blend it in. Then we're going to go to the mid value or the medium. And that's going to be our outside of this flip on this petal. Turning it around, make sure I can get at it correctly. And again, this will take another coat here before I can actually make it look like it's supposed to, but that's okay. Okay, so I want to blend in those last two. Now, I'm going to take the mid value and I'm just going to recreate the outside line of this petal that's really not there. Must have been watching TV or something when I was doing the tracing. But roses can be confusing, to say the least. That's better. Now, dry wipe my brush and blend that in as best we can until it dries. Okay. Now we're going to take that little flip and we're going to go right to the very dark. We want the inside of that flip to be very dark. And then we're going to go up to the dark. We want to have a couple values in there. We don't want it to be just one flat value in there. Just soften those two together. And then what I did was I jumped up to the light, and you can see how I had done that before. And this will help outline this petal too, so we can, in our mind's eye, see what's actually happening with this petal. So there's our flip. Our I'm actually going to bring this right down. This highlight right down like that. There we go. Okay, now another thing I want to do with that same value, and I don't normally do this, but I want to be able to see, since I really didn't have that petal in there correctly, where this petal is really going. It's right next to that shadow. It's actually creating that dark shadow. And it actually comes down past that highlight flip there too. So we want to be sure and put that in there. I'm going to actually go up a light value lighter, because I want to see this. That's better. I can actually see what's happening with this petal now with this light. Okay, so that's the outside edge of that petal. I'm going to darken that inside edge. Anytime you want something to come forward, you lighten it. Anytime you want something to recede and curl back like this flip, you darken it. So I'm going to actually make a little bit darker value right off the corner of my darkest color here. All I did was add a little bit more of the ultramarine blue to it. I actually use just a touch more of it too. And I'll show you here what I mean. So all I did, and this is the nice part of using oils, is I went up to my ultramarine. I picked up just a corner tip of ultramarine and I brought it in down here. And I'm making that darker. Now, it's not going quite as dark as I would like, so I just picked up a little bit of our Paynes Gray. See how much darker, more of a bluish color that became? That's the nice part of using oils in this fashion, where you've got your values created. If you need a darker value, you could just go in and make it darker. So now this dark value is going to go right in here and create that inside of that flip. And then it just fades off there. Okay, so now I'm going to go back up to the very dark and blend some of that in next to that new value that we had created, just so it's not sticking out like a sore thumb. And some of these strange colors that we've got going here are because I had that other petal underneath there. You can see exactly where that was. So with the next coat of colors, I am going to reinforce the shadow here, as I've kind of lost it. So I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger. There, that looks better. Okay. So we've done a second coat on this petal. We put the initial coat in on this one. We did a second coat on here, and it's going to need probably 2 more at least. We've got a second coat on that petal. Let's go ahead and, since this one has set up for a while, let's put that inside petal on there. And it's just a really light little petal. I'm going to turn this way. And the top edge is going to be the lightest value. So I'm wiping my brush. I don't want to put it in water to get those dark values out of there. So I would rather just wipe it out and have a nice dry wiped brush, because once you add water to it, it's like using turpentine. You're taking the paint and creating it to actually almost deteriorate the paint, so it's not going to accomplish what you want it to accomplish. So I'm going to just do this very edge. A lot of these petals are so little. And it's the highlight that we're putting down here. Next value down is the light. I'm going to pick that up next. And again, I'm going to apply it with just the tip of my brush, as I'm going to tilt my brush up. Okay, so I've got the highlight and the light in. I'm going to back my hand up on my brush and blend these two together. Now there's one thing that you want to do, is you do not want to go onto this petal, and you don't want to go onto the petal that we just applied. So as I'm blending, I'm using the tip of my brush again, just as I had applied it. So now I need to go to my mid value and pick up that color. And again, I'm going to apply it with just the edge of my brush. I'm going to do it this way so that I'm pulling the paint towards me and I can see I have the bristles up against that petal and I'm not going into that petal if I can help it. Ran out of paint, so I flipped my brush over and I used the paint on the other side. Okay, now I'm gonna gently bring those colors together. Okay, so we've got all the petals in, and we might even want to do a little bit lighter value between those two so you can see them. I can see it here. I guess you can see it on camera. What we could do too is go down to the dark value instead of the mid value on this background one. Yeah, that's gonna make it a lot better. And just deepen it that way a little bit. That'll help separate these two. Petals completely, so they don't look like they're just one big. And again, those are the first layers on there. We'll have to do another one at least. There we go. Okay, so we've got color on every single petal, which is a good thing. We're going to let this dry, and then when we get back together, we're going to go ahead and another layer on these. The ones we did today, we're going to put another layer on, but then we're going to start some of the detail as well, so you can see me add in some of the detail. Okay, so we'll see you soon.